Welcome back to Retire Right. Hey, if you listen consecutively, last week you would have heard Justin Bott from Services Australia. We did a bit of a deep dive of all the updates that have happened in September, new deeming rates, asset limits, blah, blah, blah. We talked about concession cards. Go back and have a listen to that. That's episode 347. Today's episode, we've just got a good old-fashioned Q&A.
We do.
And Justin, if someone's just jumped in on the Q&A and have not heard anything before about you, about anything, who are you, where are you from, what do you do?
All right, so hi everyone. Thank you. I'm going to say first off, thank you for all the questions. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great engaged community, yeah.
So my name's Justin. I'm the Community Information Officer for Services Australia. Been with the agency and its various different
Sounds
names
like the
and things
CIA
in
the agency.
For a very long time, and just put the cards on the table. I was a financial information service officer for over 15 years or so. So when I keep talking about the service and why I think they're good, that's because I was one, and I think they're really good. So yeah,
and you've probably seen it all.
A lot,
almost.
A lot, but it's still amazing how people are still able to come up with things that you've never seen before and go, oh, that's interesting. I've never seen that. Let's see what that would actually mean. Yeah.
So the questions, I've just literally grabbed them from the Facebook group. If you do want to join the Retire Right Facebook group, where it asks, where did you hear about the group? Just pop in that you heard Glenn and Justin chatting on episode 348. We'll know you're a real person and not spam. Otherwise, we're going to answer questions like from Fick, why does Centrelink only receive documents by fax? When will they stop living in the 70s and use email and have more than one analogue phone for all of Australia? Okay, bit savage there, Fick. I was asked to fax a document for my father in his mid-90s. Fick is not happy, Justin. Why can he only fax?
I'm a bit surprised because you can't only fax. There's many more ways to communicate with Services Australia. So, and I'm sorry if Fick's had that bad experience. It's been difficult for him. We absolutely get things like uploading documents through. If you've got a MyGov account linked to your Centrelink record, you will absolutely be able to upload documents through that, which means you use your phone's camera and then send it through from there. You can always send it through normal mail. You can pop in and deliver things to your local service centre. One of the things that we don't accept, which I do appreciate causes frustration for people, is emails. I know we can do some for Medicare for some things, but generally when it comes to Services Australia, we don't accept emails as a form of communication, basically because they're not secure. We don't really confirm that the person on the other side of the email is you, and so we don't use that as a way of doing that, not in comparison to the secure MyGov system that we have when you may have used your passkey to set up that level to make sure that the person on the other side of the phone is you and the information is coming from the right source. So, yeah.
Well, there you go. And I think, there are still some medical centres that will use fax because it is the most secure, less compromised way. But I guess there's probably a million people that will say there are actually other online ways. But there you go. Sorry, Fick, if you could not get a better answer, but my name is Glenn James, joined by Justin Bott from Services Australia. We're going to do Retire Right, and we're going to do it right now.
This is a podcast that will help you plan and execute one of the biggest moments in your life. That's retirement. You'll learn how to set up your finances in a way that benefits you, your lifestyle goals, and keeps you in the know within this complex world of money and investing. Your host is Glenn James, former financial advisor, author, and host of the popular Money, Money, Money podcast. Glenn is joined by experts in various fields around the topic of retirement in Australia. Any advice in this podcast is of a general nature. Full details are in the show notes of this episode. You only retire once, so retire right.
All right, dealer's choice. What question do you want to answer? Actually, Justin, last episode, one of your colleagues, Luke, is with us in the studio, and we threw to Luke to look up something, and that was about logging in on Services Australia to elect that you've started some work to get the work bonus.
Yep.
And I think you said call, and the call centre will put you on an automated reporting thing.
Yep.
If it is for the next 3 months, you'll be doing this thing. And I said, can't you just do that online? You said, I don't know, Luke's the pro. So what did Luke find out?
You can do it online.
Okay.
So you can set it up so that you're doing your reporting online. And if you go to Services Australia's website and search reporting, it actually takes you a step-by-step process on how to actually do that.
Yeah.
So it gives you screenshots of what you're actually going to see when you're doing it and helps you do it that way as well. So yes, you can set it up online too.
Awesome. And do you want to have a look and see which one you want to go first? And while you're just having a bit of a look, I will disclose that Services Australia has not paid to come on. I've not paid them, although if they want to contribute to my boat fund, I'll take their money. But this is just I think it's more of a PSA community service to have Services Australia here in the studio doing this content.
Well, one of the things we worry about is that people aren't getting things that they're entitled to.
Yeah.
And we know that people don't realise that certainly they might know about the main payments, but they don't know about the subsidiary payments or the supports that might be
particularly
there.
like the Commonwealth Seniors Health
Particularly
Card.
the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. Another one is carer allowance if you're a person that might be caring for somebody. So it's great to let that information get out there so that people can then say, let's get what we can, receive what we're entitled to, and we'll take it from there. So from the list, let's
go
through
to Chris.
Yep.
All right. Chris in the Facebook group says, what happens if you live on a lifestyle property, no income, but it's over 2 hectares? I've known people to battle Centrelink as a property over 2 hectares has CGT payable on the land outside the 2 hectares, and this impacts the ability to get the pension even though it's not generating income. So a couple of things there. We will leave any ATO tax CGT things just away from this conversation right now.
Yep.
But in terms of Centrelink, generally what's the 2 hectare rule, and does Chris just have to suck it, or can there be exemptions?
Yeah, so the
And
house...
that's the political professional way.
That's right. The house and the surrounding 2 hectares are exempt assets for Centrelink purposes. So when it comes to the pension, we're not going to count the 2 hectares.
But if Chris is living on a 10 hectare
then
plot,
the remaining 8 are potentially going to be an assessable asset, and the value of it is what you would theoretically get if you're going to sell that asset at the moment. So
now the carve out would be potentially if there was 10 hectares and 2 is livable and the rest is scrub that you can't build on ever or graze on, it might not be worth anything anyway.
Very true. Yeah. So what would the market actually pay for it? That's what we're looking for.
Right.
And if it's got no value, then it's got no value. If it's a very small, as you said, nobody can use it, then it's not going to be there. There are potentially other exemptions when it comes to properties, even farming in particular, but they really rely on the history and that they're quite complex. What I would say, the best thing here is to speak to a financial information service officer for your particular circumstances. Yeah. So the general message would be that, yes, we're going to count that asset depending on what the market says it's worth, but there may be different circumstances that would mean that we don't have to. Call the Financial Information Service, the 132300. Say the words Financial Information Service when asked for the reason for your call. Let them help you understand exactly what those rules might be.
Now, if I can double click on this one step further, when filling out the application or updating details, if they've moved and they're already on pension 67, then they've moved to a 10 hectare thing,
right.
And is it a self-disclosing thing like tax time, here's my tax return, here's all my details, or does Centrelink want to see a physical valuation of the leftover hectares other than the 2?
So when we're looking at potentially accessible real estate, we don't need you to give us a valuation. We don't want you to pay for a valuation. What we'll do is you're going to give us, hopefully, to your best estimate how much that particular bit of property is worth, whether that be the extra hectares, whether it be a holiday home or an investment property, what you think it's potentially worth. That will then have there's an independent model because we get an independent real estate valuer to take care of that. They will then work out how accurate, and that's an online thing, how accurate your estimate is. If in the area, based on the suburb and the area, it reflects what the market would actually be doing, we'll accept your estimate. If your estimate doesn't seem to be correct, then we'll come back and say, well, this is what we think the valuation of that property would be. That's not the end of the story. If you disagree, then you absolutely can appeal that decision. So, for example, if it was a holiday home, you've just received an inheritance and it's Auntie Marge's and we said it's worth this, but nobody's done anything with it for 25 years and it's basically unsafe to live in, it's not being properly reflected, do you think, in the valuation that it's given, then you can appeal that, and then they can actually get somebody to go out and look at the property and check it out yourself.
For example, because I really like practical, basic examples because I'm a basic learner and I need to be concrete in this scenario. Chris purchased a 10-acre plot for $10 million.
Yep.
The first 2 hectares, I think I said acre, but 10 hectares is where the house is, it's flat, it's mowed and all that.
Yep.
Then, like I said before, the remaining 8 is a big slopey hill that a goat would struggle to live on, right?
Yep.
Now, there's a chance that that's worth $12. That, if it was pro rata, $8 million, quote unquote, worth of that because 20% is livable.
Yep.
Could Chris, if Chris didn't know, they could potentially, just to see which way the wind's blowing, get a couple of local real estate agents and say, hey, if we theoretically, if council let us and we drew a line there and subbied the back, what do you think it's worth as is without any DA? They'd be like, you're not building shat on that. Nothing.
Yep.
And then when they log into Centrelink, they'll put, we've got this property, 8 hectares, it's worth $12. Your agents will have a look at that. They might use Google Earth or whatever thing, go, yeah, they're probably right. But if they go, no, that's worth $7 million still, at that point when they put the please explain, they can send potentially some evidence from their local real estate agents on the ground.
Absolutely can. If
so
there's
it's a bit of a process, but it's possible if it's not livable.
If you've got something, the supporting document that helps show that our assessment isn't right, then absolutely provide it. That's when you would do that. But you don't need to do it right off the bat. So in that circumstance, if you are very confident that the rest of the land was of no value or minimal value, then put the figure that you think it is. But if you really wanted to cover your bases, if you wanted to engage real estate agent, we're not going to stop you. We're not going to use their valuation just because they've given
you could use it as an appeal.
Absolutely, evidence of an appeal. Absolutely do that for sure.
And then finally, if, for example, it was a pristine, flat, 10 hectares, perfectly flat, perfect, amazing, 2 hectares at the front was the house, prorated, 20% where the house is, that's worth $2 million, $8 million at the back. We'll take the numbers down, call it $1 million. Centrelink would then say, well, you've actually now got $800,000 worth of an asset, and if you had $200,000 in your account-based pension, you've now got $1 million of assessable assets.
Yep.
Not with, jewellery and all that stuff.
Yep.
And that's a broader problem that you're sitting on actual asset there.
Yep.
Are there any ways, now if I take that one step further, if Chris is like, well, it doesn't produce income, it just sits there and looks nice, Chris has to suck it then?
When it comes to, I have an asset that's not generating an income, a better way to do that, a holiday home is a great example.
Yeah.
It's a straight out accessible asset. No complications. It's an accessible asset. It doesn't generate an income from a holiday home. That doesn't stop it from being an accessible asset. Yeah. And you've got to work out, based on your circumstances, exactly how that's going to fit in, if that's what the assessment by Services Australia is. Mm-hmm. So if the investment, that side of it, the other 8 hectares is enough to reduce or remove pension eligibility, then you've got to work through, if under these circumstances I can get a pension, well, how else am I going to manage with these new assets coming through? Which is the same with any big assets that might have effect on your pension.
I don't want to go there, but it's just my nature of drilling down into the 1%ers. But in theory, Chris, if there was pristine 10 hectares and they lived on the front too, and that was theirs and the back worth $10 million, worth $8 million, quote unquote, things are only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. Now, if the boundary was set up in a way that there was no chance in the world that it could ever be subdivided or an actual usable asset, go back to the real estate agent. Sure, it looks pristine. It's all it's not a goat track.
Yep.
It's not actually usable commercially ever. So therefore, a real estate agent might go, well, it's actually worth nothing because all you can do is run on it.
That's why
Is that
give
some
us a call.
discretion there? Okay.
That's why you give us a call. They're the sorts of things that we'd be thinking
like
about.
it's quite nuanced.
Yes.
Yeah.
It can be.
Yeah.
If they're the sorts of things you want to ring up and have a chat with us
So
beforehand.
it could be very similar to the goat track example where a goat couldn't live on it because it was that unusable, but it could also be unusable because it's landlocked between other properties and accessible.
But if you're still able to farm it or lease it out for farming or grazing purposes or something along those lines, there are other ways that might be
anyway,
used.
we'll move on. But Chris, it's just at some point, like with anything public policy, a line gets drawn and some people near those lines will be really winners or not as winny.
Yes.
But I don't
call the Financial Information Service. That's absolutely the best thing you could do under those circumstances.
All right. We're not going to get through all these questions. We'll keep going. Luke, maybe you can set a 2-minute timer. Margaret, can you ask about closing a business and no longer being a director, not receiving income from the business, and applying for the age pension? This seems to be a very complicated process, especially if it's not the end of the financial year. Yeah, so talk to us.
It is a complicated process.
Okay, next question.
There's no getting around that one, unfortunately. And closing a business doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end of the story from Services Australia's perspective. So there's a lot of other things that may be
because there
going on
could be like dividends withheld in a company that could still be paid.
More, how did you close it and did it have assets and where did those assets go?
Right.
So if a business basically had nothing and you just shut it down and you're not operating any longer, then it's actually a pretty simple thing. But if the business had assets within it and you've closed it, then where did those assets go? Or if you've transferred that to the other shareholders, where you are the primary manager of that business and now the other shareholders, for example, the kids, are now the primary managers of that business, have you just gifted them the assets of the business?
Yeah, so there is a bit of a colonoscopy, but that's kind of, on a spectrum of welcome to life. If I'm a PAYG employee at Woolworths, I go to work, I go home, pretty straightforward.
Yep.
If I run my own business, it might not be as complex if I'm a sole trader.
Yep.
If I've got an entity set up,
Yep.
the complexity wheel ratchets up pretty
Absolutely
fast.
it does. Yes, it does.
It's no different with all this crap. It's just there's no real way around it other than it's more complex.
Yes. So there are obvious reasons why you create business structures and they're great financial advantages for you potentially and tax benefits, etc. But it just means it is more complicated and there's really no easy way around that. These things can be more complicated. Yep.
Susie, how to price assets for the asset test. For example, jewellery items and artwork by Australian artists. I don't know why there's a difference between Australian artists and non, but we'll take it. How do we price these assets?
It's not meant to be. It is what you would get in the market for them.
Right.
So artwork,
Fire sale, or when it comes to actual assets, market rate?
it's going to depend on the asset. So
Right.
what we would normally say for things like the jewellery or the artwork, normally that would come under the definition of household contents and personal effects. And from that perspective, it's usually fire sale value. If I was going to put my life on the lawn, how much would I actually get for that? And the answer is, in most cases, not very much.
But if I had a $3,000 bottle of Grange,
Then that's
Might be a
need
bit
to
different.
take that into account that that's going to be different. If one of my artworks is a Picasso, well, obviously that's going to be very significant difference to just saying it's the normal, $3,000 to $5,000 that other people might say.
Yeah.
So normally you look at everything you've got and you say garage sale value, not a lot of money there. But if you know that you've got something of particular value, it is market value, so it's not insurance value, it's not new for old value, it's market value that we'd be looking at. I know musical instruments can hold their value, those sorts of issues. You do need to take those sorts of things into account.
I just think with the everything's assets. So, for example, if the jewellery is insured for $8,000, you probably put it down for $4,000 because realistically, often the insurance value is overcooked. But it's like anything. So when we do our tax returns, people are like, oh, can I claim this on my tax return, this? I'm like, you can claim a set of knives and forks on your tax return. Knock yourself out. But if you get a please explain, knock on the door, if you can't substantiate that, there'll be repercussions.
Yep.
Same as this.
Yeah, if the artwork on the wall is just, I went down and got it and it was nice and it's only worth a couple $100, then it easily falls into that normal garage sale amount of money.
Yeah.
If it's a couple of $1,000s, then you just need to take that into account and when you're giving it the value.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you've got a house full of art that's worth $1 million, you've probably got other problems and Centrelink might not be one of them. But I would hypothesize run-of-the-mill jewellery and most household artwork, I think you would put a pretty nominal figure for Centrelink.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So all good. And I don't know of any Centrelink audits where they've visited someone's house.
We certainly have in the past. We can, but it's not something that we do on a regular
But if
basis.
Centrelink wanted to audit me, I'd be like, yeah, we can meet at my accountant's office. Or have you got some type of...
There are extra powers.
Yeah.
But they're usually only if we think that the fraud has been committed rather than anything else.
And that's right. And that's it. It's like, if you want to be fraudulent, well, you'll lie in the bed you make for yourself.
Yeah.
But if you're like the questioner, Susie, just be very conservative. Don't overcook the pudding.
Don't get unrealistic about the prices. That's the important part. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's have a look. Actually, we'll continue the questions right after this.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to retireright.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. Our panel of vetted financial advisors and mortgage brokers work with people all over Australia, so they can connect with you wherever you are. That's retireright.com.au and click Get Help.
Okay, we're back. Gary asks, I'm approaching pension age. I have about $350K in super. Does it matter if I put the money into the mortgage, or should I put it into an account-based pension? What would you say to Gaza?
So assuming that when we're talking about the mortgage, we're talking about mortgage on the family home.
Yes.
Then choosing to put the money into the mortgage or keeping in super can actually have quite a significant difference on your potential pension eligibility.
Okay, so let's assume that there is a 350, because this actually it's good that Gary asked this. It's a common thing where I had someone message me the other day with a very similar scenario. She said, I've got a mortgage and super. I want to get rid of it. So we'll assume Gary's mortgage is $350.
Yep.
House could be worth $2 million. Doesn't matter for Centrelink.
Yep.
Yeah. Do we pay the mortgage off or put it into the account-based pension so we get the tax-free growth and all that?
So we know that a lot of people are approaching retirement with significant mortgages. From a Services Australia perspective, the family home, for most people, is an exempt asset.
Unless you're Chris and you've got a hobby farm, you've got...
Yeah, or you generate, that's right. If you're using the family home to generate an income, that's a different story. But apart from that, the family home is generally an exempt asset. If you put $350,000 super to cover the mortgage in the family home, it ceases to be assessable. In effect, it disappears. From a pension perspective, you will have more pension eligibility if the money's on the mortgage than if it's in the super. From a non-pension perspective, there are a few other things you need to think about. So one is mortgage interest rate in comparison to how well your super fund is performing and the income stream that the super fund might be able to generate. Another thing is things like access to capital. So it might be that you want to put down, for example, 99% of the mortgage, but not all of it, so that you've got access to redraw if you need to. So there's those sorts of other thought processes that can make a difference.
The way I would talk people through, depending on, like if you look at, what's the asset limits for a couple, 700-ish?
For a couple, it's $1,074,000.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I knew it was 70 something. So I would think if you're a couple and you've got over that $1 million around in super or in investment properties, you're probably optimizing for the tax and the return and the financial stuff. But if you are in the not self-funded vibe, you're optimizing to maximize age pension potentially.
That is going to be a big motivator there. The other thing to remember is that you're allowed to have significant assets before the pension's affected in the first place.
That's right. And this is an interesting one because it's probably more of a lifestyle vibe do I want to have the feeling of not having a mortgage
Yes.
and no super
Yep.
and get my 30 grand a year, whatever that might be, couple single, and we just cash flow it?
Yep.
I mean, you can do both. You're going to be under that limit and get the full pension anyway, potentially.
Yeah, that's right. So what makes you feel more secure, which is also, I mean, we talk finances all the time, but realistically, when it comes to things like living in retirement, security and how you feel about it is just as important as making sure the cash flow is coming through, because being comfortable really is what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Actually, D says, I'm about to receive $400K from an inheritance. I know my mum wanted $50,000 to be shared between my two kids. Is that okay?
Yeah, I hear this often, and the problem with this one is that mum didn't actually specify in the will that that's what she wanted to do.
Mum wasn't looking at Centrelink gifting rules either when she wrote the will.
No, mum wasn't. So,
Bloody mum, get your act together.
so in effect, the idea here is that mum's always said to Dee, this is what I want you to do, but I'm going to give all the money for you to be able to do that. Now, from Services Australia's perspective, if it's a $400,000 inheritance in Dee's name, then it's a $400,000 asset. If she then chooses to do what she knew mum always wanted her to do, then she has gifted $50,000 of those assets to the kids. Now, for our gifting rules, you're allowed to give $10,000 in a single financial year, no more than $30,000 over a rolling 5-year period. So if you hand over $50,000 to the kids as a one-off payment, then we will say, all right, $10,000, we accept you don't have any more. We will then add back onto your records a $40,000 pretend bank account, and we're going to say that that bank account exists for 5 years before the whole thing finally doesn't count. Now, that might make no difference whatever to your payments. It could have an impact on the rate of payment that you're receiving. All of that, and this is really important if you're thinking of your own will, all of that becomes irrelevant if you actually left the money to the grandkids directly written in the will. Because we don't argue with the terms of a will. Whatever it says is what we will say is the legal distribution of the assets. It's when you then do things outside of what the will structures puts in place that we say gifting's happened.
Yeah, okay. And also, this is where the value of actual financial advice comes into play. Because, yeah, might get 50K, but we might be drip feeding that over the next few years. Like, might be over the next 6 years.
Well, again, there's no rules. That's the thing.
Yeah.
My mum hasn't set any set ways that this has to be done, or even nothing that says it does have to be done. So, yeah, there are things that can make it less of an impact. Yep.
This is an interesting one, and I always like talking about it. Michelle asks, I'm looking at selling my home and downsizing, which is a common thing. Yep. I'm thinking of buying a camper van to travel before I buy my new home. What would that mean for her pension? So she could sell $1 million home, buy a $60,000 camper van and not have a fixed address,
Yep.
quote unquote. Now she's got $900K, $950 in the bank account. Is Michelle penalised?
So if she was a single person, if that was the scenario, then yeah, the pension would stop. But that's not as simple as that. So the money that you receive from the sale of your family home that you intend to use to purchase or build your new property is an exempt asset for Services Australia for up to 2 years, which can be extended to 3 under particular circumstances. So for Michelle, if she sold the property and she told us that she's going to buy or build something new, and while she's doing that, she's got herself a caravan to travel around, then the caravan would just be like assessing a car, or the camper van would be assessing a car, it's just a new asset. We'd be exempting the money that she intended to use to purchase a new property.
Yeah.
If she's selling up because she wants to now travel around Australia and the camper van is the new home, then what you said would be the case. We'd say that, all right, that $60,000 camper van's exempt asset, but the rest of the money is actually going to have an impact straight away. So,
would you, given that, let's call it a mill that's on ice between buying the home, or she said downsizing, we'll make the assumption sold for $1 million.
Yep.
Bought $100,000 camper van.
Sure.
That leaves us with $900. The new home she's downsizing to would be $500K.
Sure.
Which, in theory, there's $400K that's on the table. Like, sure, she might use the downsizer contribution to super. That's kind of after the fact here. I would imagine Michelle, if she's, and I don't want you to talk to this point, if she's smart, could she tell Centrelink while she's traveling that I intend to spend $900,000 on my next house and then change her mind in 2 years and only buy the $500,000 house? Wink, wink.
What I will say is that you will put down a figure and there's no implications if that figure doesn't prove to be right at the end of the period of time.
Yeah.
So you're going to, I mean, realistically, you don't know anyway. I mean, I know what you're saying.
I mean, you'd have a pretty good idea, but I would rather $400K not assessed for 2 years than it being assessed, potentially, depending on other assets, maybe.
Yeah, well, our expectation is that you're trying to be you're going to be telling us the truth as accurate as you're going to be doing at the time.
You might not know.
That's the underlying line. So what would happen if we were going to use that example of the 100 on the caravan and then the 400 left over? So we would exempt the asset value of the $500,000 that she intended to use to purchase the new property.
Yes.
It is generating, it's theoretically sitting in the bank account, but it's a deemed financial asset.
Yeah, it will be deemed, but
only
not
at the lowest deeming rate, which
Yes.
is only at the 0.75%. So no asset and only deemed at the 0.75%. The caravan or the camper van, that's an assessable asset. It's non-income generating, but it would be an asset. The $400,000 is theoretical. It's whether you put it into downsizing contribution into super, it's going to be a deemed financial asset.
If someone had a $300,000 jumper, a personal asset, would that be deemed?
What's the jumper?
Like a fashion item.
Oh,
I'm
no,
just
it's-
talking extravagant,
Okay,
like personal items.
It's got to be an income generator to be deemed. So if I had artwork, it's not deemed because it's not expected to be able to generate an income.
Yeah, cool.
And if I showed it in a gallery, then it would be self-employment income rather than actual financial asset.
Same thing with gold and Bitcoin.
Yes,
potentially.
They're not income generating, but they are asset values. So in this case, it'd be $400,000 sitting in the bank. That would affect us straight away, deemed at the normal deeming rate straight away. So yes, potentially a pension's affected by that one. Now the nice thing about this is with the 2-year rule, it's actually giving Michelle time to use the camper van and find where she wants to live.
Yeah.
So she's allowed to travel and to spend some time in some towns, whether she wants to tree change or sea change. It actually gives her the opportunity to spend a bit of time at different towns to see, do I like the feel of it? What are the people like? Before I have to settle down and choosing one spot over another.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Dave, what if you don't choose to retire but are pushed before reaching 67? E.g., what are the options from Centrelink if resumes from a 65-year-old resumes? If resumes from a 65-year-old might not get due consideration from, so can't get a job, he's 65, he's got a 2-year gap, Centrelink's no good to him unless...
Oh, he'd be going for testing eligibility for payments, same as everybody else is testing eligibility for payment. So...
No, but I'm in that situation, we'll assume that he doesn't want to retire.
Yep.
Gets made redundant at age 65.
Yep.
We'll assume he's got no super, living week on week. He can't get age pension to 67, but he could go on job seeker as a worst case.
Well, as that's the standard payment. Yeah. So there's a couple of things for the advantage, apart from the fact that it gives you an income. One of the advantages of job seeker is you get access to Workforce Australia, which means you get access to the ability to find work and access to the job network and all the employment that's put up through Workforce Australia. So if you want to continue working, then you'd be looking for a payment, same as everybody else would be if they're unemployed and want to find a job. So job seeker is the main way. But when you're over 55 years of age and you've become unemployed, then the requirements for job seeker can be more generous, I guess, if you like, than a person who's under 55. So it is a tough market for a person who's over 55 to get another job. The obligations or your expectations are less if you're over 55 when you're going for getting job seeker payment than if a person's under 55.
Now, there is if he did have plenty of super and was under 65 when this happened, but before 67, redundancy and you're pushed to, that's a change of employment status. So you can actually access your super because you're over age 60 and you've had you've retired or a change of employment, so that's possible.
Just be aware that super is an exempt, again, only from a Services Australia's perspective.
Yes.
Super is an exempt asset when you're under pension age, as long as it stays in super and you're not doing anything with it.
But if you move it from accumulation to
An income stream, an account-based
comes
pension,
online,
becomes an assessable asset. So that would generally mean if you had a decent superannuation fund, if you chose to do that, you would be removing eligibility for job seeker payment.
yes.
The other option that you could potentially be looking at is, instead of moving super all across into an income stream, is small superannuation withdrawals.
Yeah, just take 10 grand out or whatever.
You'd have to prove to the ATO that you meet a release condition every single time you did it, because you're applying for a series
Well, I think in practice, you just have to disclose to the trustee. But even if it washes up with the ATO, tell your accountant this was a payment from the super fund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you've, as long as the super fund is happy that you meet a release condition every single time you take a withdrawal out,
Yes.
you're not getting the tax benefits, obviously, of moving it into an income stream. You don't have the free access to the money of moving it into an income stream, but you're also not potentially small.
But if he's over 60, you can tide him over until he's back into the workforce.
And still keep an eligibility from a payment from us, for sure.
Similarly, Karen said, can I close my business and keep a part-time job to be considered retired and access super at 60? Yes, if you close your business, that is a change of employment status. So at that point, you could still have a part-time job and grab some of your super. But you've just got to make sure that on paper, like you've cancelled your ABN, you've deregistered from GST, you've closed that bank account that was dedicated for your business. If you're a company, you're not still a director and the company's still going, and and you do consulting, and you've just got to make sure that it's legitimate. And then you have to back to what we were just saying, you have to truthfully disclose to the trustee of the super fund that, yes, I'm over 60, yes, I've had a change of employment. If you get a please explain from someone, you've got to be able to prove it. Back to job seeker, there's a question here from Bernie. My husband, age 70, on full half couples pension.
888.50 is each. So he's getting his 888.50. She's, I'm assuming,
wife, 65 on job seeker.
so she doesn't get the 880.50 because she's not on a pension herself. Yep.
If husband turns his super into an income stream and withdraws the mandatory 5%, 17.5 grand a year payment, does this affect the wife's job seeker payment? It wouldn't, would it?
No, because we're already counting it. So it's moving from one form of a deemed financial asset, being his superannuation fund in accumulation, to another deemed financial asset, being his superannuation in a drawdown or in an account-based pension. So we'd already be counting it. It would already potentially be an asset that's going to take into effect for his age pension and her job seeker payment.
And regardless, because she's 65 on job seeker, you guys would see her accumulation account or income stream as assessable because it's fully assessable at 65?
No, we don't look at hers.
So she's on job seeker.
Yes, we look at his because he's already over 67.
Okay, she's on job seeker. You don't look at hers.
Yes.
Okay, I got it around the wrong way.
If she moved her super into an income stream, that would be a different story. She'd be moving from an exempt asset into an assessable asset, and it could have a big impact. But because it's his super, we're already looking at it. It's already deemed. Whether he starts drawing down 5%, 12%, whatever from it, it won't make any difference to his pension or her job seeker payment.
Leonie, I'm thinking of moving into a retirement village. I know some people can get rent assistance. Who would qualify?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a tricky one.
Before you get into that, there is, and we did an episode, and I'm due to do another one, but there's different types of what people call retirement village.
Yes.
Because it could be land lease, it could be all of that BS.
So what we're talking about is what you would normally think of as a retirement village.
Yeah.
So with a normal retirement village,
as opposed to a lifestyle village.
As opposed to a lifestyle village. So with a lifestyle village, it's just a family home. Realistically, it's the same, whatever's going on. But with something like a retirement village, some of them actually allow you to own the property, but most of them, what you're doing is you're buying the right to live in the property for the next 99 years. So you're paying a lump sum as a 99-year lease. For Services Australia's perspective,
And sorry, Justin, just on that could be state-based rules. Oh no, one of lifestyle state-based, retirement's federal.
my understanding retirement is federal. It's
Yes,
the same
yeah.
issues across the
Don't
board.
quote us on the because it's a whole kettle of
Yep.
worms or fish or whatever it is.
For Services Australia's perspective, if your name is on the title deeds, then you're a homeowner, you own the property, same as anybody else owns a property. With the 99-year lease, it depends on the size of the lump sum that you pay. So what we're looking at is the lump sum is called the entry contribution. How big is the lump sum? And the figure that we're looking at, and this does change, it's indexed, but it's $258,000. It's technically what's called the extra allowable amount, if you want to know your technical terms. So if the lump sum that you pay is under $258,000, then you are defined as being a non-homeowner. We count the lump sum as a non-income generating asset and you're eligible for rent assistance for your ongoing fees. If the amount that you pay is more than $258,000, then you are defined as being a homeowner. We don't count the amount of the lump sum as being an asset and you're not eligible for rent assistance. So if I paid $700,000 to go into a retirement village, then from our perspective, it's as if I owned a property worth $700,000 as a family home. That's an exempt asset. I get the homeowner assets thresholds. We don't count the $700,000, but I can't claim rent assistance for my ongoing fees.
With this scenario, if you are looking at moving into a retirement village and you're selling a house and the significant assets, one, give FIS a call, maybe two, get some financial advice and information based on your state, because the questioner might be thinking retirement village, but it's actually the lifestyle village, which is state-based rules and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so this
it can you're quite
tricky
right.
fast.
And the financial information, we know the differences between the two, but it can get quite confusing in the language that's used out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, feel free to, you're right, call the Financial Information Service. They absolutely can help you as well.
Ed, what happens if you are on the full age pension and are left an inherited home from a relative after they pass? Does this cause a tax event when the property worth $800K is signed over to you, and will you lose the pension? Again, there's often two, you don't care necessarily about the tax event.
Capital gains tax is nothing to us.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a big issue for you as a person that's receiving
But
an
I
asset.
understand the cost base will basically start from when you get the property. But speaking, and the cost base now becomes $800K for Ed. But will they lose the pension?
If it's an $800,000 now defined as an investment property, then if I was a single person and the cutoff point for a person who owns their own home is that 740 or so thousand we talked about, then yeah, the pension would go because your assets would be too high.
And as far as Centrelink's concerned, you don't care if it's an $800K property, an $800K term deposit, an $800K parcel of CBA shares. It's all assets.
Correct. An asset's an asset's an asset. So $800,000 investment property, $800,000 in gold bullion is still an asset and it's have the same impact.
But yeah, full age pension, $800K extra, there is a high chance you will have a reduction in pension.
So the only way, yes, certainly a reduction. The only way that might not happen is if this now is, you didn't own your home, for example, and it becomes your home.
Yes. Or if you had an $800K mortgage, you could bury it there.
Yeah, or something along those lines. But if it was a straight out, I own my own place and I've been left another property, then yeah, it's a very good, a good guess to say that if I don't lose eligibility, it is going to be significantly impacted on the fact that I've got this new asset. Then it is now a financial conversation about this asset is causing a reduction in my income. How can I make sure that this asset is replacing the income or improving on my income position, and how can I make that happen?
Okay, now I'm going to get the spray can out and spray paint all over this question. Ed, from his late father, inherited the $800K property. Ed's got one child who's an adult. Ed wanted to always give part of Pop's property to his adult child.
Yep.
And Ed says to the adult child, here's $400,000. I'm going to keep $4,000. Regardless of whatever happened, the moment, because it landed on Ed's name from the estate, the gift to the son is now after the fact, and Ed just gave $400K away.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
That's the thing. We can get, we see these things. I've got the house. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a house or cash. Oh, I want to gift some of this inheritance, like the question we had before.
Yep.
Mum wanted to do this.
Yep.
No, after the fact,
Yep.
landed in your lap.
Yep.
It's now yours. You're giving the money away.
Yeah. So what I'd say in those sort of circumstances, if you knew, for example, that $800,000 was going to push you off the pension anyway.
Or if old mate was still on his deathbed, let's change the will.
What's the will? Yeah.
Before and go, just will 400 to your grandson.
Yep. Yeah, and the thing about the family homes, and I know parents and wills, family home, there's this underlying.
What could go wrong?
I want to give the kids the property.
Yes.
So I want to actually give them the bricks and mortar property, and the question is that actually helping to do that? Because if I leave my home to my 4 kids, and I leave them all equally, then what are they going to do? They're going to sell it because either one has got to buy out the other 3, or there's going to be difficulties while they go from there. So if you're going to sell it and you're going to use it as a cash anyway, then accept that that's the case and don't put too much of an emotional impact on something like a bricks and mortar property.
Yeah.
If I got something like that at big inheritance and that meant that my pension was gone, then I know I don't have a pension eligibility. So I've got to use these assets in order to replace as I said, that source of income I don't have any longer. If I choose to then carve off some of that money to give it to the kids, I still know I don't have a pension eligibility. It's not going to make any difference to that. How do I manage with the reduced assets, and if I can cope with the consequences of the reduced income or the reduced access to assets, I can still look after the kids.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We can't get freaked out too much by the gifting, because if you want to give money, give it away as long as you can still, and that will be the 5-year conveyor belt, or, if you did it at age 65, you might only have
3 years.
3 years, as opposed to if you did it at age 62. So a bit of planning. Good. Question from Jenny Brown here. It's probably more of a comment. Hi, Jenny. Jenny Brown's a financial advisor out of Melbourne, JB Financial Solutions, I think her business, JBS. Anyway, we often send people who want a face-to-face retirement advisor in Melbourne. You can go to Jenny Brown. We'll probably take it as a comment, Justin, because I don't expect you to answer operational issues. Why can't both the power of attorney and the financial advisor have an authority/nominee rather than only one? System limitation or?
Yeah, realistic. So a nominee, first of all, I can say that Services Australia absolutely works with power of attorney documents. And with a power of attorney document, you can have multiple people as a power of attorney, and they can operate singly or jointly, and we can set it up to reflect that's the case. We work better with a nominee arrangement, which is separate to a power of attorney document. And a nominee arrangement can actually let the person who's the nominee interact with Services Australia as if they were the person with the online access and everything along those lines. But it is only available to one person.
So there's one field on your system, either the POA, freaking Uncle Bruce, or the financial advisor.
The nominee can only be the one particular person, whether that's going to be the power of attorney that you choose to make the nominee or the financial advisor, but it can only be the one person, yeah.
All right, we'll take it up with Albo next time he visits your office. Mark, he wants you to clearly explain what is included in assets and what is income. Is superannuation returns income? This potentially touches on the deeming that we chatted about last episode.
Yep.
So maybe, Mark, if you're listening to this episode, go back to episode 347, and at the end of that episode, there's a whole heap on deeming.
Yep.
But in the course of everyday life, the returns, I don't know, how do you want it? If there's one spouse on pension and the younger spouse isn't, and it's in super on them, nothing's included.
Yep.
So it's kind of a spectrum almost.
Yeah, so from a Services Australia's perspective, it's easier to say what's not counted as an asset rather than what is counted as an asset.
Yeah.
So the biggest asset that we generally don't look at is a family home and the surrounding 2 hectares, which we've spoken about. The other one is superannuation for people who are under age pension age. So if a person is under age pension age, their super fund, regardless of the balance, is not going to count, and we certainly don't count the income from it. So it's not deemed nothing. The moment they turn age pension age, it becomes a deemed financial asset with our fixed interest rates that we talked about last session. Whether you choose to move it into an income stream or not, that's entirely up to you. If you want to pull the whole lot out and shove it into a bank account, that's entirely up to you. If you want to pay off a mortgage on it, which we've talked about, that's entirely up to you. But an income stream like an account-based pension or a super fund where it's still sitting in accumulation, when you're 67 or older, we treat them exactly the same. And the income that we're looking at is our 0.75% and the 2.75%, not the investment return from the fund and not the drawdown you choose to take.
So if someone had $500,000 of CBA shares outside of super and or $500,000 inside of super in a cash option or conservative option, again, you don't care. You see them as an asset and we deem them.
Yes. When you're over 67, then we treat them exactly the same.
Unless it's exempt as the assets test anyway.
Because they're under age pension age, yeah.
Cool. Look, let's do one more because I'm hungry and want lunch. Rod asks, I own an investment property that still has a mortgage on it. What is the value for Services Australia? I think we touched on it. The investment property will say it's worth $1 million.
So
owes $500K on it. So
this is the tricky part.
500
so
of equity.
It's what's the security for the mortgage is the thing that we're looking at here. So this is if I have an investment property worth $500,000 with a $500,000 mortgage where the investment property itself is the security for the mortgage.
Yes.
Then the net asset would be zero because all of the mortgage is secured against the investment property. If I have a $500,000 investment property where the mortgage was secured against the family home
that's paid for,
then there's no mortgage secured against the investment property. The value of the investment property would be the full $500,000.
That's cooked, isn't it?
It's the ATO uses the same basic premise, but there's no debt against the asset. That's the thing. The debt.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So there's no because it's not.
Sorry,
security.
it's security. It's not actual. It's not offsetting the actual value.
Yes.
Yes.
So when we're looking at it from our perspective, we're looking at mortgages where the property is the security for the mortgage. So the property is on the mortgage documents.
Yeah.
Now you can have circumstances where it's jointly.
Yeah.
Where it's against the family home and against the investment property. What we do in that circumstance is we look at the value of the family home, we compare that to the value of the investment property, we come up with the proportion of how much each one is worth, and then we apply that proportion to the mortgage to say that. So if the family home is worth $700,000 and the investment property is worth $300,000, then 70% of the mortgage is going to be secured against the family home, and 30% of the mortgage.
So I've just done a scenario. Similar, If you had the investment property and you literally it was worth $1 million and you put $200,000 of your own cash into it, and then there was a $600,000 mortgage, and you also had 20% secured against your home, the security doesn't offset the actual value because it's not netting off the debt. It's just security for the bank.
It depends on the wording of the mortgage document and exactly how that went.
But this has all got to do, everyone, with retirement planning and what are you doing with your assets leading up to retirement? Are we unplucking chickens to optimize Centrelink?
Yep. So from our perspective, from an investment, and the same thing applies for things like margin loans on shares.
Yes.
So with the margin loan on shares, because the margin loan is secured against the assets themselves, then we can offset the value of the assets by the margin loan used to secure it. But the security has to be the asset that we're looking at. From an investment property, if I owned 3 investment properties and I had...
You would be a capitalist pig.
And I had mortgages against the family home, but also using against all of them were being... The moment I got some form of security in one, I used it to then purchase another one, then we will take all that into account. What's the underlying security for the loans and offset against those particular assets? The reason it doesn't affect you is because the big asset is the family home, which is the exempt asset. We don't look at mortgages against the family home.
Yeah.
So if I had, for example, that scenario, we had an investment property worth $1 million had $200,000 that I put in myself, which allowed me to take a $600,000 mortgage against the investment property.
Yeah.
And then I had another mortgage
Of 20%.
which included the family home. Then that other mortgage would be a partial or
Yeah, you couldn't offset the value because it's
secured against the property.
Yeah.
But the $600,000 mortgage it is, I absolutely would be able to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, structuring, and it may be that it hasn't mattered, because from Australian Taxation Office purposes, when it comes to things like negative gearing, they're interested in what the purpose of the mortgage was.
That's right.
So if the purpose of the mortgage is to purchase an investment property, then you're allowed to offset the interest against
But if you've
the
got
income.
intentions to keep an investment property with debt into post age 67, if the debt isn't changing and there is meat now in the investment property, restructure the mortgage and just tie it all to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Certainly have it. It would be well worth having a
But then
chat.
it's literally a broader discussion. You know, what do you need in retirement? Do you need the liquidity? Do you need to sell the property? Do you want to pay down super and pay off the mortgage? You probably don't, because you want money in super growing tax-free in account-based pension mode. So, yeah, lots of moving parts, and you pull the thread with this type of stuff and you've got a real situation on your hands.
But when things like, certainly if properties are making loss, it's requiring an income to cover that loss. You know, negative gearing is great for reducing tax, but if you go into retirement and you don't have any tax, then negative gearing is just loss.
Yeah.
You're just missing out on money.
Yeah.
So having to work that through, and does that every investment you'll be looking at when you go into retirement, does this investment structure meet the requirements of my new life?
Yeah.
It's great when I'm working, but that's a work-based plan. I'm not working any longer. That's not a work-based plan. I had one customer who was that circumstance. He had multiple investment properties. The moment he got any amount that he could leverage against, he did to purchase another. Then he got unwell and had to stop work about 4 years before he intended to. And that loss of income made the whole set of cards fall down. He couldn't manage any of it. And we were having a talk about, well, how are you going to refinance, potentially having to get rid of almost all of it to manage the debt that you can't possibly manage at the moment. So either way, that structure that he had was not going to suit a retirement lifestyle. It needed that way to be able to keep churning over to make that happen. So whatever structure you go into, whatever that asset might be, is that asset or that investment structure going to suit my new lifestyle
But usually
situation?
one thing would lead to another. If you are strapped for cash and you need to optimize Centrelink to shuffle some debt around, you probably got a bigger problem anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, lots of questions there. We're going to leave it there. I'm going to get lunch. Do you have any final comments in finishing?
I know that we mentioned them, but a lot of these issues, the bigger picture issues, even things like the tax conversation and investment property, all things that you can speak to with the Financial Information Service as well. So I'm just going to finish with a big plug for them. Free and impartial information only. Great building blocks to work out where you go from here. Also great when you're dealing with your financial professionals in explaining the terminology and the language, which may well be things that you've never really dealt with beforehand. So you're going to hear terms like allocated pensions or account-based pensions and how you have no idea what that is. You can learn that through the Financial Information Service as a free service that's there. So give us a call again on that 132300. Say the words Financial Information Service and they can help. They'll teach you from there.
Love it. Hey, if you found this episode useful, entertaining, thought-provoking, or even utter rubbish, please send it to a friend or family member. We would love to get the word out and give us a little rating or a review or a follow on YouTube. But my name is Glenn James, joined by Justin Bott from Services Australia. We'll probably see you in the new year. We'll get you back up and do another couple.
Love to. It's been great. And again, thank you to all the questions that came in. It was really good. And hopefully we can clear up a lot of misunderstandings.
Love it. See you guys. Bye.
Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the Product Disclosure Statement, PDS, and Target Market Determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Simo Interactive, Pty Ltd, and Glenn James are authorised representatives of Money Sherpa Pty Ltd, which holds Financial Services Licence 451 ep348. Martin McGrath, Financial Edge Group, and its employed financial advisors are authorised representatives of Synchron Advice, AFSL 243313. Opinions or comments from any guest on the podcast are theirs, and not those of the hosts, the publisher, or their respective licence holders.